Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Covington City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 8th. In compliance with state law, City Council meeting is being held in a hybrid format with in-person, telephonic, and virtual options for public viewing and participation. With that, we'll call this meeting to order, and Christy, if you could please call the roll.
Yes, Councilmember Soltis.
Here.
Councilmember Porter.
Here.
Councilmember Hartsock.
Here.
Councilmember Harjahausen.
Present.
Councilmember Simoma.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith. Mayor Wagner.
Here,
We have a quorum, Your Honor.
I would look for a motion to excuse Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to excuse Mayor Pro Tem Smith. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Mayor Pro Tem Smith has been excused. Everybody could please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for that. Next is approval of agenda. Regan, do we have any changes tonight?
No changes, man.
Thank you. Look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The agenda has been approved. We have no public communication tonight, so we'll move into our first. Joe, there was nothing on there. Thank you. So our first of two public comment periods. Speakers will state their name, address, and organization. Comments are directed to the city council, not the audience or staff. Comments are not intended for conversation or debate and are limited to no more than 4 minutes per speaker. Notice to all participants pursuant to state law RCW 42.17A.555. Campaigning for any ballot measure or candidate in City Hall and or during any portion of the council meeting, including the audience comment portion of the meeting, is prohibited. With that, is there anybody in the audience that would wish to address council this evening? We do have a public hearing coming up to discuss, take public comments for our proposed fiscal year 2023 budget at a later time. So if you're here for that, please wait for that public hearing. Okay, nobody in the audience. Is there anybody online wishing to address council? Please raise your hand. Nobody out in the virtual audience. So with that, this public comment period is closed and we'll have a second opportunity towards the end of our meeting. Next is approval of consent agenda consisting of items C1 through C3. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve our consent agenda consisting of items C1 through C3. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. Next up is to receive a public hearing. So tonight we have a public hearing to receive testimony from the public regarding our proposed fiscal year 2023 budget. This being the date set and proper notices having been posted and published in accordance with state and local law, the public hearing is hereby declared open. And I will turn this over to Casey.
Thank
Do you have any updates?
There's no update this evening. This is one of our required public hearings for the budget. I'll be open for questions.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council concerning the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget? Anybody in the audience? Anybody in our virtual audience? Seeing nobody raise their hand. Actually, the ground rules for the public comment during the public hearing, I was getting ahead of myself. When your name is called, step up to the microphone, give your name and state whether you are a resident of the city of Covington. Please limit your comments to 4 minutes. With that, is there anybody else in the audience wishing to address council? Anybody in the audience wishing to address council? Seeing nobody raise their hand, declare this public hearing closed. Does council have any questions for Casey concerning the budget? No. All right. With that, Casey, do you need any information from us tonight? Thank you. We will have this come back to us at a future date for more discussion and a potential action. Next up is new business item number 2, consider a potential appointment to the Arts Commission. Does council wish to take action? Debbie?
I would like to make a proposal that we hold a vote until we've had an opportunity to perform the remainder of the interviews.
Right, second.
Been moved and seconded to postpone the taking any action on the appointment for the Arts Commission. Debbie, would you like to speak to your motion?
I understand that we have a few interviews yet to complete, and I just feel that it would be best to wait until we've got the full slate and then make our decisions and vote.
Jennifer, would you like to speak to the second?
Yes, especially with the different term endings. We definitely need to interview everyone and so we can make a better decision.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? All right, it's been moved and seconded to postpone the appointment to the Arts Commission. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? We will bring this back at a future date. Thank you. Next up is to appoint the voting delegate for the 2022 Sound Cities Association annual meeting. I will be attending this annual meeting. And Krista, do we have anybody else that's signed up for this? For our annual meeting on November 30th?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot to tell Krista something. He signed me up for the meeting, but yes, I would nominate Jeff Wagner as our voting delegate.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to nominate Jeff Wagner as the voting delegate to represent the city of Covington at the 2022 SCA annual meeting. So would you like to speak to your motion?
You're on the board for SCA, you know what's going on with SCA, you have a more in-depth working knowledge of everything they're going to ask, and because I'm pretty sure you've helped create the agenda for that, so you know what's going on. So I trust you to represent us well.
Thank you. Jennifer, would you like to speak to your second?
Agree with everything Jeff said. Your regional experience will serve us well and better than anyone else put on council.
Thank you. If anybody else wishes to speak for or against the motion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to appoint Jeff Wagner as the voting delegate, represent the city of Covington at the 2022 SCA annual meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you all very much. I will definitely represent the city very well. Next is to discuss options regarding the sale, possession, and discharge of consumer fireworks. And Katrina, welcome. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's nice to be here again, to be in what's becoming a familiar place and to talk about, to use a bad pun, a hot topic on a cold night. I think you've gotten some information that I sent you. I can't believe how many residents of Covington, as I even had conversations with people, have said, please go talk to our council. I'd love to hear what they say on this topic. So that's why I came before you earlier, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, your questions. But I want to give you a little bit of quick background about how I ended up being here. I was a teacher by trade for 34 years, and I took in a foster child early in my career when I was a young teacher, and she ended up being a gymnast, which was great. But I was a young teacher and I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. So another teacher called me, his daughter was on the same team, and said, hey, we run a fireworks stand to pay for Caitlin's gymnastics. Why don't you come help us? And I still remember my answer. I said, I don't know anything about fireworks and I'm scared of them. And he rolled his eyes and said, just get out here. So I did, and to use a bad pun, I had a blast. So much fun to see families having fun together. And fast forward, I ran a fireworks stand for 29 years as I was teaching. She grew up and moved on. But it was just such a great thing to do in the summer. And I had friends who did it with me to pay for their kids' sports. And anyway, a year ago, the company TNT Fireworks called me and said, we'd like to know if you'd like to be the area manager. I said, okay, I know what my area manager does in the summer. What do they do all year? And this is where they got me. He said, your main job is to work with nonprofits to help them have a successful fundraiser. And I said, you are talking my language. So I took the job, and since then I have learned something else that I've become passionate about in addition to nonprofits. And that is what I'm here to talk to you about tonight, that there is an in-between option for this issue that just, I have friends on many councils in the area, and this is an issue that just seems to torment cities. What do we do about fireworks? They're here. They're in our area. We have communities that sell them. We have tribal lands that sell them. And people's feelings are very, very strong, as I'm sure you know. And even doing all 29 years, I didn't realize that there's an option in between allowing everything or banning everything. Because I've never heard everybody happy on either of those ends. And you probably haven't either with people here. So I started learning about ground-based fireworks. That there is the option of modifying your ban to choose what your community can purchase and let off. And what it does is it does away with the things that people complain about. I'm going to use this first. You have another screen. Oh, you have your own screens there. Just to kind of talk through some of the basics, but I don't want to just be a talking head. Please jump in, ask questions, challenge me. I just want to share what I've learned since taking this job. Okay, which button? Okay, so what I want to talk about is a win-win-win situation. It's not often you can find something where people out here and here can both feel like it's a win for what they're thinking. So what are challenges? We know these, but I just wanted to lay the foundation. As I've talked to people, I find that there's two things they don't like about fireworks, because ever since I took this job, I get earfuls all the time. And I always ask them, what do you hate? If people hate them, tell me what you don't like. I hate the things that go boom, and I hate the things that fly around, and I'm afraid they're going to catch my neighbor's house on fire or my house on fire. I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. I don't like either of those things either. I'm a volunteer with pets. I have friends that are vets, and I love my house. So there's strong feelings there, rightfully so. But there are also many families that love to do some sort of 4th of July celebration. A lot of adults that have fond memories of that as kids. People tell me, oh, didn't you used to light off snakes and then you had the little black mark on your sidewalk for the whole year? There's good memories. Nonprofits, as I mentioned, generate a great deal of income. A lot of people don't realize that most community-based fireworks are run by nonprofits. Everything from high school athletic groups, Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, church groups, you name it. I even have a senior citizen square dance club who loves to sell fireworks. So it's a fundraiser for them. For many of them, they can do that, and that's their fundraiser for the year to keep doing the good work they're doing. And then another part of the challenge, we are surrounded by tribal land, which is great. They sell fireworks also, but they are not impacted by our local municipality laws. So even when bans are in place, they can still sell. So given that, what I hear from most people is that fireworks bans have not stopped the fireworks frustrations in the community. So this was a quote in one of Sumner's publications a year ago. And you can read it. It's confirmed that fireworks complaints and noise levels are just as high in cities with full bans. And Sumner tried doing limited hours, but they just found that a ban did not lead to a safer, quieter holiday. Is there a solution? I believe there is. I've seen it happen in a lot of communities, and I have become passionate about sharing it because we all want peace in our community. We want fun holidays, and we want people feeling comfortable with what's going on, not at odds with each other. So, to share with you some of the details of a modified ban. Why is it still a ban? Because those things that people complain about are still, nothing changes. The things that go up in the air are still illegal. The things that go boom are still illegal. And nothing changes on the ones that people complain about. Auburn has modified their ban, and they use a phrase that I think is just perfect because everybody can remember it. If it goes up or blows up, you can see some people have heard that. If it goes up or blows up, it's illegal in Auburn. Very simple way to understand that. So a modified ban allows ground-based fireworks to be sold in the community. And it seems like it's an out-of-the-box solution to think that by offering something, we can make more progress toward the goal that I think we all want, whether we're here or here. We want a peaceful, fun, safe holiday. Can we get that by offering something? The communities that have done that have paired their offering with a very strong safety campaign. We're going to offer these things that statistics have shown almost never cause fireworks injuries, damage, and they don't go boom. So there's none of the noise issues, but still we want to make sure to teach people how to use them safely. And then continuing the same enforcement on the ban of the ones that people complain about, the aerials and the loud ones. Sensitive. So how is it a win for all? It's a win for those who are opposed to fireworks because the things that they complain about and don't like are still illegal. Nothing has changed. I've actually never had anybody come up to me and say, oh, I hate fountains. Oh, I hate those snakes that go on the ground. Some people don't like the black marks. But the ones that generate the frustration in our communities, they're still illegal. So that's okay. Families and neighborhoods can win, those that want to celebrate with some fireworks, because they can do that. And your nonprofit groups win. They can make money to continue doing the good work they're doing in your community. So win, win, win. A couple of additional wins. The city maintains control over what's available to residents. And since I sent this to you, I was talking to another community who has enacted this modified ban and has been very happy with it. And I'm going to share the next statistic as an anecdote because I don't yet have the actual study to be able to state it as a fact, because I always want to give credit where credit's due. But the lady that had worked on this said they have found that 90% of residents that want to do fireworks will purchase from the closest, most convenient site. So you think about if 90% of the residents are buying only those things that you as a council deem safe in your community, that's a huge change. Because right now, there's nothing in communities with a ban. And there's some people who are going to do fireworks anyway. We all know that. And so they go out and get them elsewhere where they are offered all sorts of things that we don't necessarily want. Environmental friendliness. TNT has started a really strong campaign in the last couple of years to improve the environmental quality of the products they're using. They've almost completely worked with the manufacturers, mostly in China, to get rid of the plastics that are in the packaging or the stands. They have changed the filler so that it's environmental friendly, and they've significantly reduced the amount of packaging. So that's just another side win I wanted to mention. Mentioned the community education, and I'm not going to read all of the things that these communities have done, but communities have worked with their community to very clearly let them know this is what's legal, this is what's not. As the community I'm going to talk about in a moment, as the 4th of July got closer, they put out Facebook posts saying, you know, if you hear a fireworks boom, that's not what we are allowing. If you see something up in the air, because there are people who go, see, you know, you guys legalized everything. No. Those are not the legal ones, to help people understand what is allowed and what isn't. I think in your council packet, you saw a couple of sample flyers that some communities have put out to educate their residents. This is Mount Vernon's. They have used this option for several years. The city of Snoqualmie has also used this for several years. This is their flyer. They very clearly defined to their residents what is and is not allowed. Safety campaign. This is just one example. There's many. Be safe. boundaries, brace, bucket. And communicating these safety measures in both pictorial and verbal ways so that our residents that are learning English can still get a very clear message. I'm not going to read all of that to you. We've kind of mentioned that. This was a safety poster that was designed for the community of Tukwila. The Tukwila City Council decided to grapple with this last year. They asked me to come talk to them, and I shared the same thing with them. And they spent time talking about it, talking to residents, and they unanimously voted to try a modified ban this past summer. So I worked with them. We set up 4 sites in the community of Tukwila. Our fire chief was on board. We worked with our fire and police very closely. And after the 4th of July, they always do a post-holiday report. And they came, and the fire chief and the police chief sat together, and they both had grins on their faces. And they presented a report, which I also believe you have. They said it was the lowest number of fireworks calls they have received in over 20 years. And there were 0 fireworks fires, 0 fireworks injuries. And the number that I love the most is that with just 4 sites, $45,000 was raised for nonprofits. The Tukwila Food Pantry ran one site. That's a group that has just been growing by leaps and bounds, especially during the pandemic. So they're looking for ways to fund helping members of the community. One of the elementary schools, a little feisty group of teachers who work at a school that doesn't have a funding base. They serve mostly immigrant and refugee families. Feisty group of teachers said, we're going to operate one. They raised almost $20,000 to do projects with their kids that they wouldn't be able to do. The fire chief shared that on the 4th, he just wanted to see what was happening in the community. So he spent a lot of the afternoon and evening driving around, just seeing, is it making our city crazy? And then he sat there and he said, I saw families having fun together safely. I saw families out in the cul-de-sacs. I saw safe fireworks. Does it mean that there were no aerial or booms? It doesn't. There are still people who are going to go get those. It definitely is, but it reduced it significantly. So after talking to them and seeing that amount of money, I've had people from several communities ask me to come talk to them, and I've just become passionate because if we can help our communities be calmer and safer, if we can create a win-win-win for everybody and raise money for our nonprofits that are doing amazing things, how could I not come and share that with people? So that is the overview. Here's Tukwila's statistics. It's not often you get to say that everyone wins. So I would love to hear your thoughts, questions, be available to answer anything.
I have a couple of comments. So I've lived in lots of places throughout my life and where there were bans, and they were much quieter than here. So I have to disagree with that point. Also, calls for service going down does make sense because if something's no longer illegal, then there wouldn't be as many calls about it. So I'm not sure that it indicates there's less issue. It just means fewer calls, right? So I'm not sure that that's a selling point. Could you clarify how it is?
Yeah, they said they usually get calls, for people complaining, oh, my dog's under the bed, my neighbors are letting off loud, fireworks that shouldn't be there. They just didn't get those calls this year. They didn't get calls for accidents, injuries. They got very, very few of things that fall into the category of fireworks problems.
Anybody else have any questions?
I mean, it's not a question, but I have not lived in many different places. I've always lived either 5 miles down the road or in Covington.
Mhm.
And the one thing that actually struck me that this year with the ban, obviously,
Mhm.
my house shook many more times due to very illegal things, not just, there's a ban on everything, obviously. But viciously at more than last year, more than the year when they were legal. And I don't know, is there anything that maybe Chief Easterbrook, do you have any statistics on this year as far as calls?
We got around 35 fireworks calls, but because of our staffing, we were able to respond to 3 of them. And of those 3, we're not able to take enforcement because we have to actually witness
Yeah,
the
which-
event occur,
yeah.
which by the time a police car gets there, people have to stop.
And
So-
that's consistent for
Yes.
bands and non-bands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it. That's enough.
So let's
Thank you.
keep this right now for clarifying question for Katrina, and then we can go into discussion.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
How many cities in King County have this modified ban and or because you're obviously helping nonprofits? Tell me again, how many you're involved with?
So right now, Auburn, Snoqualmie, so just King County, Auburn, Snoqualmie, Tukwila made the move last year. And I have about 5 communities that have reached out to me that are, I was at another council meeting last night, actually, that are just kind of grappling with, I'm not totally happy with the ban. We don't want the loud noise. Maybe we're willing to try this and look at it. I don't know if I can jump out of King County for a second, just to give you another example.
Well, I'm more concerned about how we may, because we're under
Oh.
King County jurisdiction.
Yeah.
That may impact our ability.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
each municipality can make their own, so, yeah,
Okay, no, I appreciate it.
yeah. Also to offer to you, before I take other questions, the mayor of Tukwila and the police chief and fire chief have said that I can offer them as resources if anybody wants to talk, on a professional peer, one-to-one conversation. They'd be glad to share with you what they found and why they supported the move with the city. So feel free to reach out to them.
Any other clarifying questions? All right, thank you very much for your presentation.
You're very
Appreciate it.
welcome. And feel free to reach out to me anytime beyond tonight. I'm happy to.
So this is a discussion item for us as council to give direction to staff on direction that we'd like to go if we want to go in any direction. Does council have any questions or anything that we can do to Regan and Dean? Do we want to look at doing a modified ban? Do we want to bring this back for further discussion, say at our summit or at a future council meeting?
I suppose if it's possible, if we can get information that compares 2020 to 2021 as far as calls, to see if the ban was successful. I'm not sure that we can even if that's quantifiable and if that's of quality because of how limited we are in officers, but I would be curious to see that if that's possible. If that's not too hard.
Joe?
I'd like for us to bring it back for discussion at the summit. If for no other reason, it gives staff time to get us information on what leading up to the ban, our service calls were how we were going out and giving information to the community, what community members were saying. It gives us a couple months to get some extra information, give staff a little bit of time and gets us through the budget. So it gives them a little time to work through the budget and then take a day off to breathe and then get back to work on this. Anybody else?
I would be okay at some point in the future to maybe reevaluate and do a modified ban or something to that effect, but we just changed it. And I would say even up until that point, we had a huge outreach campaign and flyers and we're doing all the things and people were still going up and blowing up with their situation. And so I can appreciate the smaller ground items and the fun that kids and families can have with that, but I don't know that I'm ready right now to necessarily take that. I mean, I would support if we as a council decided to reevaluate it in the future, but we can need more information and more time.
Anybody else?
I agree with that. I think we do need a little bit more data and a little bit more time. And I know, when you came and spoke with us before, we had some initial questions and we just haven't had an opportunity to look at what all is out there. So.
I have a question for Mark, or maybe Regan might know. If council were to go with a modified, if we were to vote to do a modified fireworks ban, like when we banned fireworks, it had to wait a year before it took effect. How long does it take effect to go to a modified ban, to go backwards?
I'd be happy to speak to that, Mayor Wegner. The RCW on fireworks says that any ordinance adopted by a county or city that are more restrictive than state law requires a year after adoption to go into effect. And I believe that any change to our current code, even if it was making it less restrictive, but if it's still more restrictive than state law, would still require a 1-year implementation period. If you adopted something that was less restrictive than state law, then it could go into effect as any other ordinance does. But it would totally depend on what the ordinance was, whether it was more restrictive than state law or not. But if it was a modified ban that was more restrictive than what the state has in place, I would think it would likely require a 1-year adoption period.
Thanks, Mark. Did you have anything else, Regan? Okay. Yeah.
I'm good. I'm trying to get your attention. I have a question. How much did we spend to give this decision to our voters?
I think it was, off the top of my head, it was a good $5,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, I was thinking 8, as I recalled. So that's okay.
I'd have to look in a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I guess the question before us in Joe's response is, do we have consensus to bring this back to the summit for further discussion? That would be the first question. If not, then to bring it back at a later date for further discussion. So I know Joe had mentioned that he wanted to bring it back to the summit. And we need 3 people to put that on the summit.
Yeah, if I could have, well, at least 4 of you would be better, but
Okay.
I just want to clarify what exactly council would want to see at the summit. And what I'm hearing now is proposed modified ban, calls for service numbers, and potentially what legal requirements might come with whatever decision the council makes. Would there be anything on top of that?
I think that would cover it. So, anything, yes, Regan?
It was just over 9,000 for the vote.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Casey's always at the ready.
Do we by any chance have the statistics on what the nonprofits made on the year that, they did sell in Covington, or is that something that we would ask you?
We don't.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Okay, so, you want to bring it back to the summit?
Sure.
Okay, Joe did. You want to wait for a future date, or?
I'm good either way. I think it doesn't have to be at the summit. It sounds like it's more of a informational discussion. Once we have it's not high priority from the summit, so we're a lot.
Okay.
But
Bring it back.
Can I suggest this? As Jim and I are putting together the summit, the agenda is getting kind of extensive. And so whether it's if the council just makes a decision to bring it back, then we can count it at the right.
Okay.
Time to bring it back. That's it.
Okay, so is there consensus to bring this back at a future date next year?
Yes.
To change my mind from a vote of the will of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just,
Hard pressed.
this isn't putting it on for a vote, it's just to bring back more concrete evidence.
Okay.
Yep. staff's schedule.
Yeah, just the agenda schedule.
Yep. Your agenda schedule. Thank you. Okay. Anything else on this topic? All right. Thank you all very much. Katrina, thank you very much for coming tonight. Would you have the information from other vendors besides TNT? Because we have. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And you can just get that to Kristen. Okay, thank you. Next up is new business item number 5, to consider approving the Human Services Commission's recommendations for the 2023-2024 Human Services Grant Funds. Julie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So as we discussed in this special meeting in detail, the Human Services Commission started their review of applications in May of 2022. And then throughout the summer, just took a deep dive into those applications. And you can see the spreadsheet before you, or on the back side of your blue sheet, the detailed breakdown of how the Human Services Commission decided to recommend allocations for those agencies that applied for funding, of which there were 38, and 31 are being recommended for funding of various degrees. And so, again, we talked in depth about it, but I'm here to answer any more questions that there might be.
Any other questions for Julie?
Just a comment. I'm totally impressed with the commission's work, and I so appreciate it. It's such a valuable resource. And when I was kind of connecting someone in the community, another person, that I was working with, and they're like, I didn't know Covington did this. And so it's, and it's something that we can be really proud of. So thank you.
Cool.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. And again, please pass on our thanks to the Human Services Commission and to you for all the hard work going into this, because we know it's not easy, and it's not just a one meeting thing. It takes months to get this done, which is obvious by the book that Catherine showed us. And a lot of hard work and passion goes into that. So thank you.
Yes, well, thank you. And thank you, Council, for just being really supportive of human services and Covington in general. It's just evident by the growth. We now have a new staff member dedicated to the effort. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Does council wish to take action tonight?
I move to approve the recommendations made by the Human Services Commission for the 2023-2024 Human Services Grants as presented.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the recommendations made by the Human Services Commission for 2023-24 Human Services Grants as presented. Beth, would you like to speak to your motion?
I think the Human Services Commission did a fantastic job with staff of vetting the applications. They're boots on the ground. They know which organizations do the best work. And I was really impressed, especially when they were looking at it from the lens of how are these organizations serving the residents of Covington, so that our tax dollars are being spent for the people in our community. So they've done a bang up job every year, but I think it's great what they've done. So.
Thank you, Ben.
Well, along with what Beth shared, I also heard tonight the level of effort that went into making the decisions, not only on who to fund, but on how much to fund. And they had a very challenging application process to work through, and then a lot of scrutiny that had to be made on a number of organizations to get, kind of down to the detail of information that needed to be shared. I think they have done a fantastic job, and I'm so supportive of what they're doing.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the recommendations made by the Human Services Commission for 2023-24 Human Services Grants as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It has been approved. Thank you. Next up is new business item number 6, presentation on the stormwater projects and national pollutant NPDES with Mr. Scott tonight.
Hello, everyone.
Good
The
morning.
agenda went
or
pretty
Good
quick.
evening, sorry.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ben Parrish. I'm the stormwater manager for the city of Covington. There's a lot of new faces up here since the last time I did a presentation to council. Tonight, last presentation was a little bit permit and requirement heavy. So tonight, my presentation is kind of a little more on what we were able to accomplish this year. You guys have any questions or need more clarification as I go through this, feel free to ask. There's also, you can ask questions at the end of this if you'd like. So we contracted and had more projects going this year than we ever have in the past, which presented its own challenges with trying to cover all this because they all seem to happen at the same time. But over the course of this year, we put out a stormwater maintenance contract that included 150 individual sites that required some kind of maintenance work. It's from the backlog from our work order system during the pandemic when we didn't have a lot of staff here. We were not able to get a lot accomplished. So this kind of helped to get that backlog out of the work order system, but it was everything from switching out broken frame and covers on stormwater structures to fixing broken pieces of pipe in the system. That contract went for about a year and it's finally wrapping up, I believe, next week. But that was a pretty big deal to get that off the ground, trying to scope out and bid out 50 individual sites with a variety of different kind of work. We were able to muck out and rebuild 2 stormwater facilities. Usually we do 1 a year. This year we did 2. That picture that you see up on the slide, that would be the storm pond that's at CCP, that's right behind right behind the picnic shelter. That storm pond suffered from a design flaw and never really worked right through construction. There'll be some pictures at the end of this of kind of the process of rebuilding that, but that was a big one to get that fixed and working finally. And then we were able to rebuild another storm pond in Mayor Vista, which involves removing all the vegetation, cattails and trees and recontouring the pond and restoring it back to its original design volume. We also worked with parks and the maintenance crew, and our stormwater team did a maintenance contract on the wetlands at CCP. There's a lot of reed canary grass that had moved into the buffer areas. So we worked on removing that stuff so we can keep those wetlands in good shape so they can get accepted by ecology after a monitoring period. And we're on year 2 of our 3-year catch basin cleaning contract. And this year we were able to clean half the catch basins in the right of way. And we replaced 158 of our storm filter cartridges throughout the city. So that's a pretty big deal to get that done. Moving on to some of our bigger projects. This project actually received some of the state ARPA grant money through a Department of Commerce grant. So this was some of the state's infrastructure money that they got as part of the ARPA package. So a few years ago on Pipe Lake, we have 3 stormwater outfalls that discharge to Pipe Lake. About 10 years ago, we did a water quality project and did filter vaults on 2 of those outfalls. This one was the last remaining outfall. So this project, we were able to put in a stormwater filter to treat the runoff coming from 212, which is a dead end road right on the boundary of our city limits. So now that water will be treated. We were also able to rebuild the end of that cul-de-sac and remove some hazard trees as part of this project. So now all of the city-owned stormwater is now treated that goes to Pipe Lake. So that's a pretty big deal to get that accomplished. Another project that we got done this year that kind of came up out of this winter. There's 2 infiltration galleries, and you guys, if you drive through town in the wintertime, you've probably noticed water over roadway signs over on Wax Road by Big Lots. And then around the corner by Lafayette Academy and LA Fitness, those 2 roadways flood out anytime we get any notable rain. So we did a small works contract to replace those. You can see in this picture, they're digging up about 30 feet of infiltration pipe that was pretty much plugged up with sediment. And they replaced that with 2 more 30-foot runs that direction and another 20-foot run. So we've doubled the capacity, tripled the capacity of that system. So hopefully it'll last much longer now. And then around the corner at Lafayette Academy, they're in the process of, that should be finished up this week. They're adding another pipe to that infiltration gallery as well. So they'll be able to take the water that's sent to it. Those systems have just failed because they're old and they're undersized and difficult to maintain with how they were designed. And they just, infiltration galleries only last so long until the rock and fills up with sediment and they just can't get rid of water anymore. So that's pretty big. That's in the wintertime, our maintenance crew is out there quite often putting out cones and water over road, but getting these two fixed is gonna be big for us to get us through the winter with 2 less headaches. Another project that you guys just saw at council last week, I believe, we accepted the bids. The Tamarack Pond Rehabilitation Project. In the Tamarack neighborhood, this pond has some safety concerns. The pond is very deep and these side slopes over the 20 years that it's been there, the side slopes have sloughed, so it is now greater than 3-to-1 slope, which requires fencing and becomes a safety concern. We will hopefully be starting this project in the next few weeks. We will actually be regrading this pond to soften those side slopes, which will remove that safety concern and also make it easier for maintenance because it's pretty steep. We'll also be, it is a old King County design wet pond, so it always has water in it. We will be partially redesigning this pond so that it will drain down. The water will pass through to the reserve facility for water quality. So this will be used only for storage. So we get big storms, it'll fill up, but when the storms are gone, it'll drain down, relieving that safety concern and making use of it. So that'll be a big project to get off our plates. And then some future projects that are in the wings. We are at 60% design on what we call Lillian Berger Water Quality Project. We'll probably rename it by the time we're ready to go. But this will take care of 5 untreated outfalls to Jenkins Creek. You can see the map on the right. There's 3 cul-de-sacs. It's the old neighborhood off of 180th. The other side of that map is Jenkins Creek Park. So those cul-de-sacs have very simple systems that are untreated and discharged directly to the stream for stormwater. So this project will be putting water quality facilities on those outfalls so that we will be removing the untreated water from the system. This should wrap up. I believe there's only one more untreated outfall in our city after this project is complete. So we've done a pretty successful job, I think, of identifying if they're going to get us where their stormwater hits the stream, then let's make sure everywhere where our stormwater hits direct discharge to streams or lakes that it's treated. So getting Pipe Lake done and getting this project done, we're looking pretty good. The last untreated outfall should be covered when we do the 256 culvert replacement. So, and then future, hopefully next year, we're going to start design on Covington Park Swale project. That is the map on the left. It is an old holdout from when that neighborhood was built. That row of houses, there's 21 houses that are at the base of the hillside. Timber lane sits up above. Groundwater pumps out of that hillside into the backyards of all these houses. When they originally built the neighborhood, they put a ditch behind the houses in their backyards to get the water to go down to a storm pond. And 20 years later, the ditch doesn't exist in most places. It's been filled in, has fences put on it, sheds. The hillside is sloughed down and partially blocked it. And there's 3 or 4 houses that routinely in the wintertime get water up to their back patios and up to their back doors from the water coming out of the hillside. So this has been a project that's been a long time needed, and I'm glad that we're going to be able to start on this. So we need to reestablishing a drainage channel through 21 backyards is going to be an interesting problem to solve. I'm hoping we can come up with some creative solutions to deal with it, but it's going to be an interesting one to get through, but it's been a long time coming. So hopefully that'll be, we'll start working on design that next year. On to some other things for stormwater. Earlier this year, we were, you guys authorized another engineer tech position in the budget last year. We were able to hire Dan Taylor as another engineer tech. He's primarily focused on our business source control program, which is an NPDES permit requirement that starts next year. So we started building this program, which basically Department of Ecology is requiring us, we currently do inspections on stormwater systems on private property, businesses, but it's at a property scale and it works with property owners. So it'd be the, the entire Safeway complex, not the individual tenants. Business source control program starts looking at the tenant level and the occupant level for stormwater pollution potential. So currently right now, we inspect 81 businesses in Covington. Dan has got the business license list and has narrowed that down to 99 businesses that have the potential of creating stormwater pollution. Some of those exist in with our bigger stormwater inspections on private property. But all that being said, next year, we are going to start doing targeted education to the business owners and not just the property. So right now we do outreach and we have communication with the property owner level. But a lot of the problems we're finding is at the tenant level, not at the owner level. So one thing being, and that's what this wonderful picture is our favorite thing, garbage and so another thing that we are going to implement, and it's a campaign that PugetSoundStartsHere.org has spearheaded. We're working with Republic. We are going to start putting shut the lid stickers on all the dumpsters, and we'll have some targeted education materials that Dan will bring along with him when he does the business source control inspections to talk about dumpster enclosures and keeping lids shut on dumpsters to keep rodents and keep pests and keep stuff from getting wet. It keeps the dumpsters from leaking. We have a lot of problem with dumpsters that run off into parking lots and get into drainage systems. And just kind of some all around dumpster etiquette. So we're going to be kind of focusing on that with our program because that does tend to be a pretty big issue in some of our bigger commercial complexes. So hopefully we're going to get that stuff rolling here pretty soon. First of the year, our business source control program starts off. So I know Jennifer, our clean team person, and Dan are all excited to get sticker and dumpsters. So that's probably going to start happening here pretty soon so that the stickers will be in place by the time we start knocking on doors and talking to the tenants about stormwater in general and how they handle their garbage. Something else that's very exciting, and I encourage you all to click this link. We are now a member of the Adopt a Drain program. It was started by Hamline University in Minnesota. They're now in 5 other states, including Washington. There's 12 jurisdictions in Washington that are a part of this program. If you click on that link, this also you can see on my slide there, that is now on our homepage on our website. It's the informational banner that scrolls across there. Look for the Adopt a Drain. You type your address in, it pulls up a map of Covington and it will tell you if there's a drain near your house. You can click on it and you can adopt it. Hamline University will send you a package, informational package on what to do when you adopt a drain, keeping leaves and debris off of it, throwing that away. All they ask is that you report how much debris that you remove throughout the year so that we have some valid numbers and statistics for what kind of impact we're making. You also get a nifty little yard sign that you can put in your yard next to your basin that you're taking care of it. So far, we've got so the blue ones are ones that are adopted. So far, we have 3 basins adopted in Covington. So I all encourage you guys to go to this link and find that. This is kind of our soft launch today to talk to you guys. Throughout the next month and into next year, we're going to start pushing it pretty hard and try to get some community support behind it and try to start, get some of these yellow catch basins to turn blue with people taking care of them. It's fun. You get to go with your kids and your families. You get to name your basin. Not whatever you want. I think they do monitor what you name it. But looking at City Seattle has quite a few basins. So does Redmond. There's quite a few basins that have been adopted. And there's some pretty clever names that people come up with for what they name their basin. So that is a really neat program. We're excited to be a part of it. It's growing fast in Washington. So the goal is to have everything in Western Washington in this website and just have a big map of all these blue basins that people are taking care of. Also something that's coming hopefully by the end of the year here, we will be doing a household chemical recycling campaign. That's an NPDES requirement for us to do some targeted outreach for specific concerns. This campaign will focus on the storage and use of household chemicals and how to get rid of them. So making sure that if people have chemicals in their house, that they're storing them properly. You know, they're not just keeping open oil containers out alongside their garage. But we're also going to be providing information on what to do with that stuff. So that'll be hosted on our website, and we'll be just sharing that information on our Facebook page. And there's actually quite a few businesses in this area that will take stuff, like the paint stores will take old paint, and the auto parts stores will take auto paint. So we're going to try to get that information out. So we did a survey, and most of the people's issues with household chemicals is we don't know what to do. So that means we need to do a better job of giving them access to places to do it. So that will be starting here, hopefully by the end of the year. And another thing, this is a long time coming. This is my pet project. And I think I mentioned it like 3 years ago when I did my last council update, the Wingfield Master Plan. So the city owns 9 acres of property in the Wingfield development. It's had various rounds of restoration from various developers, and none of it really ever panned out or was maintained or followed through with. So Mother Nature has kind of taken this area back, but not in a good way. There's a hiking trail through the lower portion that floods, it's covered in water 6 months out of the year. This is a salmon bearing stretch of Little Sioux Creek. About 3 or 4 years ago, I started conversations with Mid-Sound Fisheries and some of them, actually the Middle Green Coalition, Great Wingard. And we started talking about what we do with these properties. It's rare that a city owns that much acreage of stream frontage that's accessible to the public. So through years of discussions and through a pandemic, this has not fallen off of anyone's radars. We got grant money from Ryan 9 to do a master plan design of all 3 of these pieces of property. They also gave us a little seed money for construction. We have Department of Ecology and Ryan 9, the flood district. We've reached out to several other granting agencies that are all wanting us to come back once we have the master plan, their own support of this project. When it's done, our plan is to look at all these parcels, come up with a master restoration plan, including removing some of the man-made obstructions that are in the stream. Portions of the stream are armored with concrete. Clean the stream up, remove the trail that's in the floodplain, fix some of those floodplain connections. So the first phase of the project, once it's done, will be some on the ground construction. And then after that, it'll be a master restoration plan that now when we have nonprofit groups and scout troops and anyone that wants to do service work, we will have a master plan and we can start taking chunks out of that master plan on this piece of property. That's always been kind of one of our struggles is we have good people that come in and want to do environmental work, but we always have to come up with a project for them to do. So once this is done, we have many partners at the table that all want to work here, and it'll also allow service groups and other folks to come in and be a part of that too. So that's a big deal. They are starting consultant selection here. This fall, we'll be starting the consultant selection process. Hopefully next year, we'll be doing the master plan, and then we'll be teed up to start throwing it at grants to try to get the rest of the construction. So that's a really cool thing. It's a big deal. And it's been a long time to get here to this point. And then, oh, I went too far. If you have any questions, there's some pictures here. This kind of shows you what it takes to rebuild a pond. This is kind of a start to finish. If you start in the upper left, that's what it looked like before. They dug all the muck out. The design flaws, there was an underdrain, which was a perforated pipe buried in wash rock, and they wrapped it in filter fabric. They should not have wrapped it in filter fabric because it's sealed up and the water couldn't get into that trench to get out of the pipe or get out of the pond. So the pond filled up with water. It was supposed to drain down and always be dry. So this is kind of a sequence of digging out the muck, getting the wash rock exposed, cutting that filter fabric out. And as you go down to the bottom, it's them putting the new material back in, 18 inches of compost and sand, and then seeding it. So I'm very excited to see that next summer when it's not full of cattails and water. And it's a nice grass pond. Does anyone have any questions?
Just one question. The flawed design there in CCP, is that something that we can recuperate some costs from?
That, well, so the flawed design is kind of something that we stumbled across after that project was already done. When the contractor built that pond, it didn't work from the get-go. We actually had them come in and completely remove all that material and put it back. So their obligation to try to make that pond work,
Okay.
they satisfied that. The engineer that designed it says, this will work, let's do this. Everything was signed off and it didn't work. So some of that is on, you know, there. Some of that's on us because we approved plans that there was that design flaw in it. We didn't catch that.
Our engineer approved it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see what
So-
you're saying. Okay.
Lessons learned, we don't wrap the trench in filter fabric. So moving forward, we know to look for that.
It doesn't filter that great.
You know, and
Okay.
honestly, this was one of the first types of style infiltration soil. And it was one of the first ones that we had designed and installed in our city. We were trying to move towards this with the low impact development that our code requires.
Mhm.
So it is a good lesson learned, you know, as we moved into this, and same with the design engineer, it was relatively new. There wasn't a lot of this style. Now, this is what we prefer, and we've got a lot of these in our city, but we're smarter now and know what to look for.
Yeah, this was a fascinating presentation.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Couple of questions. So in conjunction with the chemicals and the safe disposal, is there, I see an opportunity to maybe promote using safer biodegradable chemicals. Some things that we use in our homes there are safer alternatives. Still trying to figure out the moss out for the roof. I don't think anything else really works except that horrible stuff, but is there a campaign for that as well so that it can be pollinator friendly, clean friendly?
There's a lot of information out there. We are a member of Puget Sound Starts Here. So that is a regional stormwater outreach group that started because of our MPDS permit requirements. So we are a member of that group. They do have some information out about that. Our capability is more. Now that we have Dan, our new engineer tech, he is gravitated towards some of this stuff. And now that he's here, we have a little more capacity to start looking at promoting more of these things than we had in the past when it was just me. So yes, that information exists out there. And it's just a matter of getting some of these bigger programs out of our hair. And I'm going to try to start putting some of that stuff into with a lot of information. So part of it is just feeding Carla information. Carla will post whatever we, need her to post with this stuff. It's just having the time to get that to her.
And maybe I'm thinking, maybe it's a nonprofit to get in and like put signs in your yard. I'm chemical free or whatever it is, just to get people thinking about other alternatives and how it can protect the environment. So the other thing about the drain, adopt a drain, we have a drain right in front of our home, but it doesn't really, we should, but it doesn't really get leaves or get clogged. But what I do watch is when people wash their cars, and I'm trying to be very mindful of not washing our cars that often because it can go right down into the drain. So is that another thing that you can monitor and or even another drain somewhere else?
It is that the car washing is kind of a difficult thing to enforce. Technically, that's not okay. And typically when we get phone calls for that, we will talk to homeowners about maybe washing in their grass or in their lawn or going to a car wash. A lot of the education around car washing has been go to a car wash. Water's recycled, it's treated. So that's a hard one. We know it happens. It's a hard thing to enforce because it's hard to go knock on someone's door and say you can't wash your car in your driveway. But we do try to educate about here's what happens when you do. Most of our systems, the MPDS permit and all the regulations that we're under were written and designed for cities, assuming that all your stormwater system goes straight to a stream. We're fortunate because we're a relatively new city. Most of our development was built with stormwater regulations in existence. So a lot of our basins go to treatment, they go to storm ponds. So yes, technically, if something hits the basin, that could be considered an illicit discharge, but it's going to a pond. There's a facility in the way that is designed to kind of handle that before it gets discharged to a stream. So that's where we try to enforce with education and alternatives. And like I said, now that Dan's here, I'm hoping that we can we'll have the capacity to start getting more of that information.
And one final question, it's just real technical. I see that the it must be the catch mesh, the black fabric that's around all the drains. I know specifically on 256.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Filters,
Yep,
yeah.
Filter
Is
socks.
that just stays permanently and then like, or is it seasonal? I'm just trying to think like.
So, filter socks are a requirement for developers. Anytime you're doing a construction
Oh,
project,
okay.
any of the
Got it.
basins that have a potential of having dirt leave the site
Mm, mm,
into the road, any
Okay.
basins in that affected area get those. So hopefully those socks will catch dirt and sediment and then filter it out. And then the contractors maintain that. Sometimes the contractors aren't the best about pulling them out when they're done, so they seem to stick around a lot longer.
Well, it's
but-
probably with the roundabouts. I'm sure that's when I noticed. them
Yeah, so if
going
if there's an active construction site nearby, and typically those things change as construction happens, they'll set out and put some in the nearest basins, but then as activities change, if there's need for more, we will require them to go, extend out from their project. So sometimes you can see them far away from what you would think there would be construction, but that's just because they're still.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Ben, thank you. I remember when this NPDES first came to the city. That's why I mentioned this to Scott. 'Cause that was
Yeah.
his biggest thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing to see how far we've come from that unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still unfunded, but
Mhm.
thank you for all the hard work you're doing. and everybody on this. So
No, and
thank
I've always appreciated your guys' support, and I think it is pretty amazing to think I had my 16-year anniversary this year. And you guys hired me to comply with the permit, figure it out, and do it. To go from there to now, we have 2 engineer techs, and we're all doing really good things. And the issues we used to have don't exist in our system. We've done a lot of good stuff. So,
Wow,
thank you guys for your time.
thank you.
Yep.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Next up is new business item number 7. Consider adopting the 2023 legislative priorities and policies. Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As council knows, at our last council meeting, we reviewed some proposed priorities and policies. Some edits were made by council and asked to be brought back to you. So this is the final product from what council reviewed last time in the formatting for both the priorities and the policy document. So at this point, if there's any additional edits, we'd want to review those now, or it's available for final adoption by council if you're ready to do that.
Don't have any questions or ready to make a motion? I'm ready to adopt.
I'm waiting on Jennifer to tell me she found a place that needs a comma real quick.
Wow.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the 2023 legislative priorities and policies with a comma here and there that we were. Joe, would you like to speak to your motion?
So first, let's clarify, Jennifer's always the one who finds the places that we've missed commas and may need to be in, so I always wait for that when we're talking about things. But I think that this is a good document. We really did work it over in our last meeting. I always think we have one of the better looking handouts for our legislators, so they always remember it's from us. I do think we need to make sure that they get a big sticker of karma to put in their offices now, so they always can remember us, but this is very good and I'm happy with it.
Thank you, Joe. Jen, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, I used to do transcription when I was a legal secretary back in the day before attorneys knew how to type. So that's why commas, I keep a cadence when I'm reading. Thank you so much for making the changes that were based on consensus, and they look great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Does anybody else wish to speak for or against the motion? It's been moved and seconded to adopt 2023 legislative priorities and policies. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all very much. And thank you, Regan and team, for bringing this back to us. Next up is new business item number 8, the final report of the council subcommittee on public safety. And who am I turning this over to?
Regan.
Regan, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a report that's been worked on by Mayor Pro Tem Smith, and council members Porter and Simomo and myself, and Chris has been helping quite a bit as well. And as you recall, at our 2022 summit, the city council decided to create a subcommittee to review several items dealing with public safety. There were six purposes for this subcommittee that the council gave, and those were to evaluate alternative public safety organizational structures, to estimate the costs associated with establishing an in-house police department for the establishment of the South King County Police Department, analyze tax options to increase revenue to pay for public safety, conduct a business-wide survey regarding a business and occupation tax to fund public safety, recommend how additional revenue could be spent, and the last, identify roles of the city, business community, and residents in helping to address public safety concerns. So I want to make sure that as we go through this, I don't want to read it to you, but I'll at least cover the highlights. I think it's important to take a little bit of time on this as we go through it. And so the report is broken up into those six sections and then with a conclusion. So that first, which purpose that was given by the council was to evaluate different alternative organizational structures. So the structures that the committee evaluated were an in-house police department, a partnership with other jurisdictions, contracting with another agency, and lastly, remaining in our current King County Sheriff's Office contract. So under in-house, this option obviously gives the council and the city complete control over public safety in the community, but it is expected and anticipated that would be a significant increase in cost to the city. We met with 7 other cities and compared the services that have in-house departments, compared their services that they provide and what we currently have and would continue to want, and those costs in that evaluation process. The second was a partnership with other cities for policing. This option would have spread the costs of public safety to all partner jurisdictions, but we discussed this option with multiple cities, and the only real options that seemed to fit were with jurisdictions that were regionally really close to Covington, if not abutting the city of Covington, and that significantly reduces the number of jurisdictions that are available to partner with. So that was one that we felt there wasn't quite the appetite for that as we met with and spoke with other jurisdictions with this. And if this is something the council wanted to do, there'd be a much more feasibility work that would need to go into that action. The other one is to contract with other cities. We met with multiple cities that have their own departments, and specifically Kent, Renton, and Issaquah. We spoke to them about the possibility of a contract where they provide police services here in Covington. Kent was a no, that's just something they would not be able to do, as they're having a difficult time filling their own positions. Issaquah thought that that's something they could potentially do, but weren't thrilled about it because of the distance in geography away. Renton was a little more excited about it, felt like most of their, not most, but several of their police officers actually live in the city of Covington and thought that that might be something they could do. It still leaves the city in a contract relationship, and so it'd have to be evaluated whether those services and costs would be much different at all from what we're currently in. And then the last one is to continue our contract with King County. The recommendation from the committee on that is to remain in the King County Sheriff's Office contract due to the value of the legal protections provided by the agreement, and to provide additional time for the city to further explore available options or alternatives if that's something the council wishes to continue to evaluate. The next purpose was to evaluate the costs for an in-house and or regional police department. Talked a little bit about in-house and multiple cities that we met with. But without an extensive public safety study, it is extremely difficult to accurately detail what those additional costs would be. We did pull the most recent study that a city's done, and that was CTAC. They did a police services study in 2019. They chose to stay in the King County contract as a result of that study because of the indemnification clauses that are provided through the King County contract, and because their costs would have significantly increased had they moved to in-house. But just so you know, we did reach out to Auburn, Black Diamond, Lakewood, Mukilteo, Renton, Seattle, and Pierce County as we assessed what that cost difference would be. And it was very difficult to compare apples to apples in what that cost per officer. We're used to that in the sheriff's contract, but a lot of jurisdictions don't do it that way. So it was really difficult to compare that. But from what we could gather, costs did increase per officer with any of compared to what any of those cities had, except for Black Diamond. We noticed that there's comparing apples to apples as closely as we could was about $11,000 a year cheaper per officer than what we're currently paying, but with significantly different services that are being provided by the two agencies. So that's for in-house. The next would be a South King County Department. That was something that was considered. In evaluating the cost for this option, we really had no data to use to determine if there would be significant cost increases or not. Obviously, there'd be additional jurisdictions partnered with this so they could help share that cost. But the discussions really led to lobbying efforts for a regional police authority, similar to what fire authorities have. That would basically create a separate taxing entity where they would, the police authority would have the ability to tax like an RFA does and provide public safety within that geographically defined area. The difficulty with this is there's not a lot of appetite from other jurisdictions at this point to pursue that lobbying in 2023 because we just didn't have the time to fully vet that. There's been some proposals similar to this type of thing in prior years, but in meeting with multiple cities that I spoke to, it was, I think this is something to pursue in the future. We're just not ready to do it in 2023. And this is not something that Covington could go alone on. It would have to take a real coalition to lobby in that effort. If council wanted to continue to pursue that, that's something that other cities, as I mentioned, are interested in pursuing, but would need quite a bit more work to prepare what our lobbying efforts would actually be in that regard. The next is purpose was to analyze tax options. In the state of Washington, as you know, there are not many options that are specifically enumerated that allow us to raise funding for public safety. The top 3 options are listed in the report, and I'll go through each one of those quickly. The first is a public safety sales tax that we've talked about in here. That's a sales tax of up to 0.1%. 15% of that right off the top goes to the county. The city can keep the other 85%, and it would bring in around $500,000 per year for public safety. The next is a levy lid lift. A multi-year permanent lift is the type of levy that we need for public safety funding. This must be approved by voters, and council can set the rate at what would be needed to fund public safety and specify that rate in the ballot measure. The amount raised would depend on the percentage set by council, and it would be advisable prior to doing that, to hire a consultant to really accurately identify what that needed percentage would need to be for that lift. The next one is the business and occupation tax. We've spent quite a bit of time on this one. As council knows, it can be approved by the council if it's less than 0.2%. As you know, we've held several open houses and conducted a survey that I'll talk about a little bit later. The recommendation on funding options from the committee was to hold a study session or an additional meeting with the city council to further discuss and deliberate on those options. Currently, that is one of our summit agenda topics. And so we have that available to talk about then, unless the council would like to do it sooner, then we need to schedule a special meeting. So the next item is the business and occupation tax survey that the council tasked this committee with coming up with. And that was to develop a survey and invite all businesses in the community to participate in it. So we developed several questions, put the survey together. We developed a postcard with a QR code and a link to the survey, and then all the council participated. And we walked around and took this to every business in the community and got about, we received 44 responses to that survey, which was a pretty good sampling of our business community. In the end, the kind of consensus around that survey was if the council will dedicate the entirety of the funds raised from a B&O tax to public safety, then the business community could support it. And so that was the result of the survey. The next purpose that was given by the council was to recommend how additional revenue could be spent. The committee put together the list that's in that report that increased funding could be spent on. The first item there, bullet point, was CPTED, or crime prevention through environmental design strategies that our community development and our police could work with the business community in adopting and implementing. The next was adding 1 or 2 detective positions. Next, providing training and support to loss prevention officers, providing additional emphasis patrols at businesses, hiring a business liaison officer, and hiring a community service officer. After creating this list, we were informed by the county that our contract costs in the next couple of years will be going up nearly $1.2 million, which is obviously a significant increase. We talked about this at the budget workshop. And so adding to that list would be paying for increased contract costs. And then whatever's left, whatever revenue is the council chooses to implement, if they do, is raised, then anything above what pays for the additional cost could go towards some of those items there. The priority ones would be hiring a detective, providing CPTED training to businesses, and hiring a community service officer. And those would be, that is the recommendation from the committee, as is in the report. Next is to identify roles of the city, business community, and residents in helping to address public safety concerns. And you can see the table there in your report. I won't go through each one of those recommendations, but there are several given that the city can do. Most of them we've just reviewed and talked about. There's recommendations for the business community to really be involved and engaged. And we see that happening with work that CEDAS is doing with helping to develop a downtown association and some other efforts. And then some recommendations for our residents in our community to really help promote public safety and work to keep us all safe. That list is not an exhaustive list, and it should be expanded and added to as we develop and as this work continues to progress. The committee to talk about what the city, business community, and residents can do is what the council asked. But the committee also got into some other organizations like the county, the state, and HOAs that should also be included in that list and come up with some recommendations for that. So those recommendations are there for council on the entities that you all asked to see. So in conclusion, the committee feels that this is a turning point in our city in determining the safety and vitality of Covington's future. We recognize that bold decisions will need to be made, and businesses and resident involvement is absolutely key in this effort. So there's a lot to unpack here. A lot of work went in to provide this to you, and there's a lot more work to do. If you have any questions at this point, I know Beth and Joe and myself are happy to address those now.
But it's coming back for further discussion at our summit as well.
We have the business and occupation tax coming back. The other recommendations at this point, there's not anything scheduled on a further agenda with council.
Thank you for giving that update. Beth and Joe, thank you for being on this subcommittee. Really appreciate you, all the in-depth. I know you guys, three of you and Regan and everybody did an extensive amount of outreach as well as we did with all the good. You need anything else from us tonight, Regan?
No, not at this time. I would just ask the council as you have more time to review this and think about it, if there's things that you think need to be brought up and followed up on. Let's bring those up with me and we can schedule those. If we want further work from this committee, that's something that will need to be decided as well.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. That concludes our new business tonight. Future agenda items. Does anybody have anything they'd like to see on the future agenda? We have our next meeting is on Tuesday, November 22nd. We do have a study session at 6 for strategic planning, and then our council meeting would be a pretty extensive meeting that night. We'll be doing quite a few ordinances as well that night. Anybody else have anything they'd like to see? One thing that we'll need to look at, we did the appointing a voting representative for the SCA annual meeting. We will need to look at doing the SCA voting representative for the board elections, which will take place in December when that comes out. And with that, we'll move into council staff comments. And Chief, start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. Couple things, the community care specialist, Darren, who was here earlier, we had a chance to work with him this week and he's kind of started at this point. We met with some people in one of our parks who had set up a campsite there. And we let Darren kind of take the lead on that. And he did his part. He got the services there for them to connect with. They refused them. So now we are going to be able to trespass them out of the park. Unless of course they change their mind and decide to accept services. So this effort enables us as the police to enforce the law a little bit better because we need to be able to provide beds and things like that if we're gonna make an arrest. But the fact that he was there, we're very hopeful this will work out, but the process, we're gonna fine tune, but we're very excited to get that going. And really happy with Darren's effort on that. Secondly, our crime has started to come down a little bit. So for this year over year, from October of last year to October of this year, we're down about 10% on our crime. 2021 was a big spike, so not so good. Of that 10%, 12%, our property crime went down 12%, which is good too. That's the majority of our crime. We had a little bit more violent crime, they would call it. Most of that is domestic violence rate related. We've had an increase in domestic violence this year so far. I think that's about it for me.
Thank you, Chief. Ethan.
Yeah, hi, council. Nothing from me tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Ethan. Don.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Selena.
Hi, good evening, council. I just have a couple things I want to share with you. The first thing is that we held a public hearing this last week for a project called Cedar Breaks. It's located just east of Covington Elementary off of 272nd. That was for 55 townhomes. So this is going to be one of our first townhome developments that we're going to be seeing in the city. That's exciting. That was an Oak Point development, and they are planning to move forward with that. So obviously that's going to be a couple of years before we see the homes being built, but it was great to see someone use some of these codes that we've adopted to promote these different types of housing units. The other thing too is that the Covington Commons project, the one that's directly to the west of the school site, adjacent to the city-owned property, they also received their approval, their land use approval last week. And so they're going to be moving forward into engineering review and obviously moving on to construction. So those are two really big wins for our team. Associated with the Covington Commons project, as you know, the council had authorized Regan and staff to kind of work through a memorandum of understanding with the property owner because they need that easement through the city's property for sewer. We just received their version of that from their attorney group. So that is being routed through our team. So we're going to try to get that to you in December, but there's a good chance you may not see that until January, depending. So just a heads up on that. Other than that, I have nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thanks, Selena. Casey.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. Mark?
Good evening, council. There's no executive session tonight and I have no further report. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Regan?
Nothing else from me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Regan. Krista?
I just heard from Morgan's Creek HOA that they have scheduled their HOA meeting, their annual HOA meeting for next Monday, November 14th. So now we have 2 HOA meetings that we have been invited to, also including the Foxwood HOA meeting. Previously, I heard from Sean that he would like to attend the Foxwood HOA meeting. I did reach out to him today and ask him if he would rather attend the Morgan's Creek HOA meeting. Both of the meetings are held at 7 p.m. virtually. So I don't believe that he would be able to attend both, but I haven't heard from any other council members. Would anyone be interested in attending either the Foxwood or Morgan's Creek HOA meeting next Monday, November 14th at 7 p.m.?
I'll have to let you know.
Yeah.
How about we just email it out?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's all.
Thank you. Gina?
Today was full of lots of presentations, but I thoroughly enjoyed them all and they were incredibly, not only entertaining, but very informational. So thank you for that. I am looking forward to the call for our summit meeting from, can you remind me of his name? From Jim, a lovely individual. And just finishing off the year strong. That's all.
Yeah, just a couple of items. Just as a reminder, City of Covington and Covington Rotary are hosting a Veterans Day commemoration this Friday, Veterans Day, 11/11 at 11 a.m. It's about a 30-minute ceremony. We'll have a color guard from a local Boy Scout troop. And it will also be, in addition to recognizing our veterans that serve, we've got several of them in the room, an opportunity for people to retire their worn flags. So fun thing at Covington Community Park at the Margaret Hardo Pavilion. So second year, hopefully we can make that a city tradition. And also had the privilege to attend and graduate from CERT training on Saturday. And we've got another member in our city staff member that joined us. There's about 7 folks from Covington, either staff or residents. So we're adding to that group of folks that can help respond in an emergency. And it was a lot of fun, very informational. So, and I think that's it.
Debbie?
We had one member in our HOA that completed last week. It was Jacqueline Paul's husband.
Yeah,
So,
Brian.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I was privileged last week to attend the virtually the King County Regional Homeless Authority meeting, where they rolled out their 5-year plan and a couple of bullet points that I picked up. Their 2023 budget is at 132 million. 6 to 7% is at admin and the rest is contracted out or funded to their contracted agencies. They said that they are willing to send a member to any municipal county, council meeting to give an update if we're interested in that. And they said that they're really focusing on equity this year or next year. And then Mayor Wegner and I were both on the virtual call last week with AWC Cities on Tap. And it was interesting that they rolled out their legislative priorities, which were just like a perfect match for what we had on ours. So that's good. And while they're in session, there will be weekly calls on Fridays at 12:30 for 30 minutes each Friday to give updates on how things are shaping up. So I don't have the information on, how we join those calls, but I'm sure that if I get it. That's all I have.
Thanks, Debbie. Jennifer?
I can't wait to adopt a drain. I'm gonna Partridge Drain or something, look for it. It will, with a clever name. I love that. Also, happy election day. I can't wait for the meeting to be over so I can check results. I'm like, it just drawn to my phone, but I'll wait. It's a really big day. I hope everyone voted. I was talking to my 18-year-old today, reminding him it's the last day. And really, every vote does count. Some of us at this dais know how much every vote counts. So really, 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 a happy election day. It's something we should be grateful for. Not every country in the world has this privilege.
Just a reminder to everyone here today is if you're planning to apply for a committee with SCA, have those applications in by Thursday. And that does include me. I still have one I need to finish with them. Other than that, it's getting cold outside. We bundle up. Let's make sure that you see someone out there who looks like they could use an extra jacket. Let's get out and help our community. Show them where the resources are. Point them to the resources, or we can get a hold of Darren to get them the resources. Other than that, I hope everyone had a great Halloween. I'm still eating my children's candy because they have left the ones that they didn't like that somehow Dad does like. So other than that, that's all I've got tonight.
Thank you, Joe. I do not have any comments tonight, so we'll move into our second of our public comment. Speakers will state their name, address, and organization. Comments are directed to the city council, not the audience or staff. And comments are not intended for conversation or debate and are limited to no more than 4 minutes per speaker. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council this evening? Nobody in the audience? Is there anybody online wishing to address council? Seeing nobody raise their hand, and we do not have an executive session.
Mayor, sorry.
Yes.
Just one thing that was reminded when you guys talked about getting cold. Our maintenance guys will be de-icing tonight. So just an FYI, that'll be early tomorrow morning.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Just right quick, are we having a warming center? I know we did cooling in I mean, it's not gonna get that bad, but that never.
Anything else?
Thank
Thank you. With that, no executive session. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.